Boy, do we have a treat for you today. But before we get to our fantastic, amazing guest today, I'm told to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by Channel Command, the simplified, easy to use PRM for all you technology vendors out there that comes with benefits, the PRM with benefits. So check out Channel Command over at channelprogram.com. That's it for the commercials. And without further ado, let me bring this gentleman to the stage because he's a busy guy. He's got a big event coming up tomorrow. So here we go, Mr. Tim Conkle. Look at that.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Man, I'm doing good.
So I was reflecting on, I was telling you earlier, I was reflecting on when we first met back in, I think it was 2016. I forget exactly what event it was, but here comes this guy, walking in, strutting in, shoulders back, head high, and just kind of walked in, owned the room. And I remember Dana was with me, Dana Leadholm from the old ID Agent days. And I said, who the heck is that? She's like, oh, you haven't heard of Tim Conkle? I said, no, I haven't heard of Tim Conkle. And so you come, strutting in, and my first interaction was that Texas draw, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like this guy. And and then that was what, 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now, and to see your journey, just of what I've been able to see of it over the last 8 years, has just been nothing but phenomenal to watch. So I'm glad to have you on the podcast today, especially because you've got a busy day. You got a big annual event coming up tomorrow, and so thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Hey, I'm honored to be here. I mean, hey, don't let the walk and the shoulders back. It doesn't mean that much, but yeah.
No,
if I was half of what people's perception was, man, I'd walk on water. I'm telling you.
Well, look, I mean, it's fake it till you make it. Perception's reality. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So, God, there's so many different places I want to start. And I was telling you again, I feel like I didn't have to do my research or homework on you, but I felt like I felt compelled to. I went back and just kind of tried to replay a lot of interactions and kind of, when I'd call you for advice and we talked just through your model and all this stuff. But so when I met you, right, you obviously have the best backgrounds in this space, and I always like interviewing the tech founders or just folks been in this space that have been both sides of the marketplace. You've been MSP side, you've had your hand in technology as well, and so take us through kind of the early days of founding and running the MSP. What actually drew you to the MSP space to begin with?
So look, I mean, honestly, I mean, if you look, I'm 57. In high school, there was not a single computer. We still took typing classes. And it wasn't until I graduated and then I went straight to the military, Army. And I was really good at what I did. And that was shooting things, right? The easy way of saying it, I was really good. And so I quickly got elevated up to where I was a master gunner for like division commander. Well, the problem with that, division commander never goes in the field, and I got to skip a lot of really crappy part of the military. But I had to have something to do when I wasn't in the field, and so they set me behind a computer. First, it was an IBM PC. It had two 5.5 or 5.25 inch floppies.
Mm-hmm.
You boot with one and run WordPerfect with the other. And it was, and I honestly, I absolutely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the military, I went to work for Ross Perot's company, and that was mainframes, and they did fractional mainframes. And I was a Unix administrator, and if I posed this question, Jim had bought them, and I went all the way to the top. I said, "Hey, I want a sales position in this company." And the guy I was talking to was like, "Dude, you got zero experience. You just came out of the military. What do you mean?" Because EDS, if you sold one deal, you was a millionaire, because it was for 300 million, 400, 500 million, $1 billion, 10-year contracts.
Yep.
And I I just fell in love with this space, and I'll never forget. I was doing some stuff late at night for EDS, and I just sit down. I open my paper up, and it says for sale, IT company.
Hmm.
And so I mean, I went and looked at it, and I was hook, line, and sinker. I mean,
what was it about it? I mean, what was the spark? What drew you to that? Was that, had you had entrepreneurial kind of thoughts prior to that, or is it just
well, so
new adventure?
yeah, if you look at my family, all my brothers own their own companies, all my uncles on my mother and my dad's side. The common denominator in all that is my dad. My dad started all these companies, and he'd give them to my uncles and his brothers. Why? Because if he didn't do it, he had to support them, basically, you know. And so he literally taught us all how to build companies. And so I knew I wanted a company. I just didn't know what it was. And I'll never forget when I first looked at the company at Roland Technology. When I first looked at it, it looked like a TV repair shop. And I'd grown up. I'd love to take stuff apart. Now, I rarely put them back together, but I love to take them apart. And so it just kind of fed a little inner thing. And I had such a desire to be successful and to own my own company. But this was up and coming. And I'll never forget, I called my dad and I was telling him about it. And I was like, Dad, I mean, it looks like a repair. It's computers. And so I was trying to get him to talk me kind of out of it, because all my brothers and uncles, they all came up in labor intensive businesses, construction, stuff like that, foundation repair companies, concrete companies. and I thought, I'll get my dad to talk me out of this. And then my dad does the smartest thing that my dad can do, which to me, my dad's the smartest person on the face of the earth. He's 86. And he goes, well, if you're scared to do it, don't do it. He knew that challenge would kind of push me into it. Now, back then, really, you didn't have really big businesses. It was small because you used Lancaster and Neville a lot to do work group networks. Really was the 90%. And then you had a few that would do full-fledged Novell. But it's really, back then, it was about computers. It's about making computer talk or putting it on a little work group network and making some little cheesy application work on it, you know?
Right.
But then I met the people in this industry, and dude, the people are incredible. I love them. They're weird as shit, but they're my kind of weird, right?
I can relate. Yeah,
I'm telling you, it is a great industry, and I hear people talk all the time. Oh, I would have picked something else if I'd have known all this. No, you wouldn't have.
No.
I mean, because 5 years later, you see them at a conference, and they're still doing the same thing. And so I just had I mean, I was groomed from a kid to an adult to run something, to be successful. So all of my brothers, all of my uncles, and my dad's brothers have multi-million-dollar companies.
Wow.
And so, you know, and it's kind of the rite of passage. It's just, what do you choose? And for whatever reason, I chose the IT space, which, looking back, 2020 vision, best decision I've ever made in my life. You know, it's been really good.
How much of that, you know, there's the role model, there's your father setting the example and basically teeing up your brothers and your uncles, but how much of that was really a competitive landscape or competitive bent, right? Like, you know, I'm going to go out there and show them that I can do it. I can build bigger. I mean, was there like that sibling or familial rivalry as well?
You know what is weird? I see two things in my world. I thought nothing about rivalry. I thought about making it, you know, making a living and doing all those things. I never thought to myself, oh, watch, I'm going to be bigger and better than my brother. It just never came. And the second thing was, my dad had a weird way somehow of putting in all of us. You take all my brothers, my uncles. We do not know what risk is. We only know what do is. So in the worst case scenario, when you do something is you're not successful. And if that's the case, then you do something else or you do the next thing. But it's really It's really just the do is what was put into us.
Right.
Do being do, right?
Right.
I just got to do something. And if we had time, I could tell you the little bit of a path that it took to get to IT, because I really built inside me was this thing of I want to build something. I want to be successful. And my dad was analytically probably one of the smartest people I know. My mother, best salesperson personality you'll ever meet in your entire life.
I was wondering where you got it from. Okay.
And so
now it's starting to add up.
Yeah. So most of my brothers didn't get, they got the dad side.
Yeah.
But somewhere in there, mom threw some soup in my mix and kind of stirred it up real good. And I got both. I got both the thing of being able to talk to people, the love for people. My mother loves people. I'm the same way. And so it's the right combination. If you love people and you want to build something great and you want to change people, it's a great industry to do it in. I mean, it's incredible. If you look, you can look at my dad. He did all those things to help my brothers, my uncles, and his brothers, right? If you look, the 20 is not far off of what exactly my dad did. It's nuts. It really is. If you really think full circle and you step backwards, I mean, I'm just doing it on a macro level where he was doing it on a micro level. But it's pretty wild,
Yeah. So by that point, right, when you went in and bought Rolling, you reinvented yourself, for lack of a better description, a couple of different times, right? Going into the military, then working on computers. I guess you kind of got the gift of computers while in the military, but then going out working at EDS, and then the third, I guess, incarnation. There's probably several more along the way, but the third is now you're a business owner, entrepreneur. And so, what was day one like for you when you closed on it and now you're running this business?
Scary. I would say probably Roland Technology did $300,000 in revenue back then. You peeled off of it, you're going to make 60, 70 grand. I was literally walking out of a job that paid me more. And I had health insurance. I had a pregnant wife at home, and I had a mother-in-law and my wife both begging me, please don't do it. So it was, and I say scary. Scary is not the right word for it. It was a challenge. It's hard to build a company. I don't care what industry you're in, what you're building. It takes pieces to the puzzle that most people are not willing to step outside their circle and get.
Yeah. So, this is probably, I don't know, maybe 2019, 2020, somewhere around there, where remember you and I had a conversation and you said, just wait, just wait. I've got this model, this thing I'm doing, it's going to be bigger than anything else. Right. And I'm sitting here thinking, all right, part of me is like, all right, bigger than anything else. Maybe. But then the other half of me is saying, all right, if anybody's going to do it, somebody's going to do it. Tim's going to do it.
Yeah.
And then over the next couple of years, you're slowly starting to put the foundation and the right pieces of the puzzle in place. And we'll get to where you are today, because where you are is just absolutely incredible today, especially with one of the last announcement that you made. But, I guess take me through kind of the thought process of the 20, because there's the early iteration of the 20, and then there's now what everyone knows as the 20, as now this just massive machine that's moving faster than just about any other organization in this industry.
I'm gonna share a weakness first. Tim Conkle's weakness, if anybody wants to know what it is, it's seeing things really close. That's why the people I surround myself with is very detail oriented and typically very, very close. They can see tomorrow, and they can see 5 weeks from now, or they can see a year. That's as far out as they can see. I see 10 years. And so if you look at the 20, 12 years ago, I whiteboarded the 20 on a board. I whiteboarded exactly where it is today. Fred always bugs me. Fred Picola always bugs me. He goes, dude, when you first told me this, I'm like, whatever. because most people cannot think in terms of, okay, this is where I'm going to be 10 years from now.
Right.
And then stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Ups, downs, all around, right? Stick to the plan. And so I whiteboarded it the 2012 years ago. So I saw how this industry had to consolidate. I saw how this industry, if nobody helped the small guy, they're going to be left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, people that have worked 15, 20 years building a company is going to end up with something that's worth nothing.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's kind of where it was. And it really, even in the whiteboard, when I whiteboarded it, the thing was, how do I help everyday MSPs that know nothing about business but are incredible at service delivery?
Mm-hmm.
How can I help them succeed? And that was the mantra in the beginning. And then it's how do you help them compete at parity in all the pieces? And then at some point, if you get everybody going in the same direction, you know, I'll be a little funky here for a minute and talk a little bit of Bible. You know, if you look back at the Tower of Babel, you know, the flood had happened. All the descendants of Noah are sitting around, and they're like, if we never want this to happen again, what we have to do is build a tower way high up in the sky. So that's what they started doing. And, you know, the Bible says that God came down and said, hey, I'm going to interrupt this, lest man do anything that he puts his mind to. In other words, if we all communicate the right way and think the right way and do things the right way, it's an impossibility to fail. A God principle. So the Bible says he confounded their language. In other words, he confused them. That's why communication is number one thing you have to fix in everything.
Yeah.
If you can fix communication, everything else works. And so it's funny kind of how we weave through life the things that are behind us, what we were taught, and we're just better together. And that's what people don't realize. I was at a conference the other day and I looked around the room, all really, really small MSPs for the most part. And I asked a simple question: who in here at least has $250,000 worth of revenue? And then I worked backwards, the numbers in my head from the front of the room. And I said, with a stroke of a pen, there's $100 million company in this room. And that's what people don't realize. We're 1,000 times more powerful together than we are separately.
Yeah.
Our values higher, our, you know, getting from point A to point B. And that's really 12 years ago. That's what I saw. You know, looking forward. I mean, if I can get a bunch of people, and I'll never forget because it was funny, but people told me there is no freaking way on the face of the earth you're ever going to get that many IT owners to listen to you, to seed their power and give it to you in the sense of, you know, outsourcing part of their stuff, really standardizing to do it. But what has been ultimately proven out is whatever people put their minds to, they can accomplish. Yeah. As long as they're not confused with communication. In other words, you be straight.
Yep.
And then everybody knows the end goal. End goal for the Tower of Babel was a tower so tall that God couldn't flood the earth ever again, to where mankind couldn't crawl to the top and survive. Look at the 20. It's where we all communicate correctly. It's where we all come together. And as consolidation happens in these big mega MSPs come into the fray, we've got a place to grow, a place to go that's safe, secure, and pretty much we can live.
And so take me through, because the time that you're thinking of this is pre the Blitz, right? The Blitz of private equity coming in and starting to roll it up. It's arguably it's still at the front end of private equity coming to the vendors. They started with the vendors, right? Because they realized the recurring revenue models, and then, you know, after twisting arms and you know, just seems like it took longer than it should have, but they finally started to realize that private equity should be going after MSPs and rolling up in predictable revenue models and long-term contracts or what have you. But so you're pretty far out in front. You know, take us through the difference between your model in kind of that standard private equity roll-up strategy?
So there's the difference with private equity is they want to first buy a platform,
Mm-hmm.
and then they want to bolt MSPs on the side of it, bolt-ons, add-ons, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is their tool sets are disparate, their cultures are disparate. And you don't know anything until you buy them, really. I mean,
Right.
you know the financials, you know what tools they use, but you really don't know the people, the culture, everything. And so what ends up happening is it's just like Tower of Babel. It creates all this confusion. And so they lose on average, I've been told 30% attrition. And so
Yeah.
where it's still worth it because the multiples at the bottom compared to the top, there's so much distance between them. I mean, losing 30%, we don't care. And well, it's not they don't care, they do care. But that's why you have earnouts.
Yeah, but that arbitrage covers the spread and they can afford it. Right?
Yeah. And you still make money. That's typical PE.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything goes to PE at some point, even us, because every company should track to where the money is,
mm-hmm.
and bring everybody on board that you can to get there. The difference in ours is this model is so completely different that most companies that are of any size, if they want to continue to grow, they've got to do it through M&A and organic. Why? MSPs don't know how to grow organically.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you hear things like PE firms looking for 5% growth. 5% growth, organic, man, that's anemic. I mean, that's I mean,
it's treading water.
Yeah, you got 5% attrition, so you're doing 10% organic growth, 5% net because you're doing this all the time.
Yeah.
And they're just and they keep buying companies that are exactly the same. But if we buy enough of them, at some point you get critical mass,
mm-hmm.
and then you own a market. In our case, or still in PE, most big companies need the financials of a PE firm in order to get there. Us, on the other hand, this model was so incredibly, I'm just going to say cool, right? That everyday commercial bankers look at it and say, yeah, how much you need? So the cheapest money that you can get with no equity. So we gave no equity up. So the 20 has no outside equity player from a PE firm or anything like that backing it, which is very unique, which means it gives me a lot of latitude and leeway to let MSPs come in, line up to the model, roll up, and then instead of taking that money and sharing it with the PE firm, we share it with the IT company, which means I can make him wealthier than he ever would have been by himself on his own. And so that's where the cool part comes in, right?
Yeah.
I help a lot of people that, and let's just be honest, I always talk about people's magic. Right people, right seats. I'm a pure visionary. That's what I am. I fly by the seat of my pants. I make decisions really quick, and I don't understand risk in the sense of, okay, let's look at this, but oh shit, what if it doesn't? I don't even know how to think that way. My brain doesn't work that way. So it was a really, really cool way of getting to where we're going, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of have that now. So if you run magic from top to bottom, all of a sudden, even MSPs we buy, we take the owner and we say, okay, what's his magic? Because if you put him in his magic, the trick's always going to work.
Yeah.
If you're not in your magic, it's just an illusion. And at some point, when the lights are turned on, the illusion is, it goes away, and everybody's like, I knew that was just an illusion. But a trick, people talk about it forever. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. So take me through what's different between acquisition number one for the 20 and what are you in, like 30 something now?
35.
I mean, I can't.
35,
35.
35 and
Yeah.
23 months.
It's truly remarkable. But
Yeah.
what have you learned? Whether it's the process, the efficiency, or the psychology, or what's different between the first one and now the 35th?
Well, so the 35th is obvious, and we'll probably talk about it. It's completely moved that no one suspected. Nobody, if anybody said that would. So let's talk about the 34 first.
Sure.
Honestly, there's no difference. There's no difference in them. Because think about the 20 model. You line up on tool set.
Mm-hmm.
Now you line up on culture. You line up on sales. You line up on service delivery. We typically do for a member somewhere between 80 to 90% of all ticket load. And it comes straight to a live answer help desk where you immediately get a technician, no dispatch. You immediately get qualified people, which means that the customer hears the 20 over and over and over and over and over and over. So when we buy them, the customers, they're like, oh, wow, this is incredible. What took so long?
Yeah.
So where typical PE has 30% attrition, we have less than 5.
Wow.
And so this, when you line all of these things up, buying them only becomes flips of switches for 80% of everything we do. We live in one instance of
so easy. Yeah.
The hardest part is moving billing. And billing's tough because everybody has a little bit different way of calling things this or that. But if you look, the first 6 we rolled up, the first month we really did anything. September 2 years ago, we rolled 6 companies up. 90 days later, complete integration done, period, over. Second month, we bought 4. Did the same thing. And so it's tough if you have no connection. I can go back to the Tower of Babel, right? When he confused their languages, the Tower of Babel it fell apart, and all the people dispersed in 40 different directions. What if they hadn't have? What if they had just kept doing what they're doing?
Right.
No telling where we'd be. I mean, because now you'd have perfect communication with people and perfect collaboration with people. No angst against one or the other. Everybody's in their seat of magic. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned is simply this: egos are expensive.
Yeah.
A lot of IT guy companies think to themselves, I'd rather be king than rich. King of what? King of nothing versus being rich. The founder's dilemma. And so it's actually, this is what's weird. It's actually pretty easy because you've done all the legwork, and then you can pick and choose at the perfect time when they're ready, versus a typical PE firm goes out and they send out 10,000 emails to 10,000 MSPs, hoping they can find 20 in there that they can actually fits their criteria.
Right.
So yeah.
And it does play into that long-term strategy, right? Because you're essentially, incubating. It's a collaboration, right? It's incubating, and then, at the right time, if it makes sense for both sides, it's to your point, it's the flip of the switch, right? And it's a brilliant model, right? It's absolutely brilliant. It does shortcut a lot of those challenges that are associated with that dance, the PE dance, and then trying to figure out, at least, you're gonna have some differences in tool stack, but if it's really kind of an incubation period, you're normalizing that along the way. You're normalizing or understanding culture and some of the potential landmines that go along with that. But then the outcome is that you're incubated, and it's a much more seamless integration, and everybody wins at that point. And so that was 1 through 34. Now the 35, I think, took the market by surprise. I certainly, and that, I've been around, and I know you're not going to, text me on the side and say, hey, did I tell you about this? But number 35 was pretty needle moving, pretty massive. So tell us about Calabrance.
So if you So think of industry, right? When you buy a company, you're stuck with their past sins. Past sins being 3-year contract on this tool. So you got disparate tools that you're paying for, even if you're using them or not.
Right. Yeah.
But what happens is, if I want new members to come into the group and they've got a 2-year contract with ConnectWise, guess what? They're engineers. They do not think, if I could prove to them that they would be $5 million better off if they just eat the tool and go on, they can't see it. It doesn't matter how crystal clear you draw the picture, they cannot see it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to change with what the industry does. The industry says we're going to do these elongated contracts with tools. And so if I'm going to keep curating, I've got to expand the tools. Mm-hmm. So Collaborants was really a way to expand into ConnectWise and Enable. So now you curate the same way, mm-hmm. and think in terms of just having another channel that's just like the 20. That is a place that companies can go. They can get all the pieces of the puzzle they need and grow really good companies. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were asking me, so who should people really follow? And I used my dad. I said, my dad always told me, if you want to build a $50 million company, you can't join a group of $2 million companies.
Right.
You all have the same problems. You're all trying to figure out how to get to the next phase. And I think I think the IT industry is chock full of people that sell things, one-dimensional things, that at the end of the day is not the needle. You got to have it all. And so if I use my dad's conventional wisdom, it's follow the guy you want to be. And we're not talking about his personality. We're not talking about anything else. If you want to be in the space industry, who would you follow? Shit, I'm going to SpaceX.
Right.
If I can get a job there for 5 years and let them teach me everything, that's what I'm going to do. 5 years into it, I'm going to go out and, so I think this is what breeds lots and lots of frustration inside of this industry. It's all these people coming in, they're touting that they can build big things for you. But if you really take everything off the top, you find out that it's just icing. Mm-hmm. There's no freaking cake, Mm-hmm. And so it has created such mistrust and angst in this industry. I think worse than any industry I've ever seen. So, Collaborants was our way of rolling with the punches. It's also a really cool, huge failover. So now the 20 has a huge failover help desk in Iowa. Iowa has a huge failover help desk in Dallas. And so I think it's just part and parcel where we're going. I wouldn't discount something like that happening again, somewhere in the life cycle, maybe 2 or 3 times, because you automatically curate a group that's on the same tool set.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's what's great about this model, right? Is that, you could pick 2 or 3 different pockets, right? You apply that same principle, the normalization, the incubation, the get everybody on the same team, and then, ultimately start picking them off. And maybe that's not the right way to describe it, but you start to transition or however we want to describe it. But I could certainly see that in probably, 4 or 5 different capacities. Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things to it. The other thing is at some point, you have a client that says, hey, we've been on ConnectWise. Now we're talking about big customers that use maybe ConnectWise at an enterprise level. They want level 1 and 2 help desk. They want you to work in their tools. Well, if you have one stack, guess what? Now you have to you're not going to convince them to change.
Right.
So again, I think it's just the expansion of not just MSPs, but bringing something to an end client that they want as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think another really cool thing about the first 34, I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, yeah, I heard you're rolling up all these little bitty MSPs. They're not that little. I mean, if you look in the industry, I mean, to hit $1 million, what, 80% never do it.
Right.
So let's say 20%, let's say that's the correct number. I'm not buying any of the 80%, but I will say this. In my model, I can buy, in fact, I heard somebody on your podcast a little while back say there's really no market for an IT company that has 400,000 in EBITDA. 400,000 in EBITDA, if it's 20%, you're looking at a $2 million company.
Mm-hmm.
Buy them all day. I would buy every single one of them, as especially if they got on the platform and lined up. So I think the other piece to the 20 is I'm the only real marketplace for a lot of these MSPs, unless they're going to sell to another MSP who doesn't have any money and has the same problems. And let's be honest, if you have a $2 million company, you buy another $2 million company, it doesn't move your multiple,
right?
Which means no triage, which means you just bought a dying asset.
Yep.
Because they're struggling to grow and they're bouncing along with growth, not in attrition, kind of just bumping up against each other. You just literally bought a loser.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, right? Because there has been that mad rush to roll up as many, of the more sizable needle moving type of MSPs and so they're going after the MSPs that have $1 million EBITDAs up to $5 million. And that market's been kind of, it's almost non-existent anymore because it's been all acquired, and where you're coming at it from you're coming at, bottom up versus that kind of top down approach where they've kind of run out of steam. And there's a lot of those PE groups are like struggling to figure out what are they going to do next, right? The way you're doing this, the way you're approaching this, I mean, your upside, especially now that you've diversified into different, tool stacks, or call them different kingdoms, right? Between the ConnectWise, the Kaseya kingdoms and Enable kingdoms. But yeah, what you're doing is your TAM is probably relative to the average private equity group. Your TAM is probably 100x of what they're able to even approach because of their limitations.
Yeah. And again, when you're all lined up, it's just scaling. Honestly, it's just a lesson in scale, and if you can buy 2.5, and we bought MSP up over $7 million, in top line revenue. But really, to me, the sweet spot, 2.5 million.
Yeah.
Because I can consume 6 of them in a month.
Yeah.
So if you consume 2.5 million companies, that's $15 million. Every PE firm would say yes to a $15 million company.
Yeah. Yeah.
But their $15 million and mine, I work less to even transition it than they do. It's hard, and that's the problem. I saw a long time ago that in order to consume a lot, they got to look like you.
Yeah.
And so it's a way for the bottom end of the market to actually get traction and actually build something that somebody will pay them something for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the triage difference between a $2.5 million company top line and a $15 million, astronomical difference.
Yeah.
Astronomical. Yeah. So not only do I win the triage battle and the value proposition between the 2 points, I also win that I'm where a lot more of the market lives.
Yeah.
And so now it's just the motion of doing it where you cookie cutter your legal. Like I can buy an MSP, my legal's less than $5,000.
Wow.
I can buy an MSP. He can get the same multiple that he can get if he gets a broker, but he doesn't get a lot of the upside, and he doesn't have to pay 6% to a broker.
Right. Right.
I can do it to where I structure it to where it's more advantageous to the MSP from a tax perspective than another. Why? Because I can, where I can do 98% goodwill, and I have to obviously depreciate that for like 15 years, or I can get it all at the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not so tightly spun that everything has to be in our advantage. So I really built this to where I want the MSP to get the most that they can. So no MSP that we've bought that's in the group has an earnout. None. Why? Because we already know we've beat the attrition piece. So why not let the earnout be investment? And now all of a sudden, first six that we rolled up have more than tripled their investment in 23 months.
Wow.
I mean, rule of 72, if they got 10% on their money, it takes 7.2 years to do that. So this is not just a machine for Tim. Honestly, this is a machine that if you're an MSP and you're never going to really top that 3 million mark, it's your marketplace. I am your market. Ready, available money to buy you, all the pieces that go with it. We keep all the employees. It's really been cool. And it's another byproduct of this. It's a retirement thing for a lot of them.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had people buy. I've had people sell to me. We make them stay 6 months. At 6 months, they can retire. Their investment's still there.
Mm-hmm.
They're set. They're just not. And the bonus to all this is you get to learn from a guy that built it. So let's say that your idea is more of, I want to build my MSP to 10 million first. You get everything you want from me I don't charge anything inside the group for that. You literally, how many people do you know out there that would have access to, and I'm gonna pull a number out of the air because I don't want to look like a dick, has access to somebody that maybe has $500 million in net worth that you can pick up the phone and call, or you can stand in front of it and for nothing except just part of something and playing the game, you get, I mean,
it's powerful.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
It's, well, I've heard that so-and-so can really help people grow quicker, faster, smoother, cleaner. Well, what have they done?
Right.
And that's not being, wow, somebody just sprayed something on my windows. They're spraying fertilizer or something outside. But that's not bragging, because there's lots of this group that have done very, very well. I mean, they have grown incredible MSPs, and they did the smart way. They said, hey, I want to go get a recipe, so.
Yeah. Well, look, we're going to start wrapping this up because I know you've got your big annual vision event tomorrow. I'll be on a flight tomorrow morning, headed out your way, so I can't wait to see you in person. But I guess drop a dime on the event here. So tell us about vision and what to expect.
So vision is always pretty cool because you kind of get what smart people think are happening to the industry, and I won't put myself in that. But there's a lot of really good information comes out of not so much vendor related, but if you listen, you get to know where the industry goes from people that can see 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. But I think the bigger piece is like-minded MSPs coming together and rubbing shoulders.
Yeah.
And to me, if you took the people out of this industry, I wouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
I mean, the people, like I said in the beginning, they're weird as hell, but they're my kind of weird, man.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, look, sir, I'm very honored to have got to know you over the last 8 years or so, 9 years, however long it's been, and just to see this journey, just this evolution and what you're building, and really, I think it's, I think it's underestimated or not appreciated really enough how much of an impact that you are having on this industry, like this approach, because again, even as the whole PE world is matured and MSPs in theory have matured over the last several years, you're bringing a, arguably And I argue with you. You're bringing a better model, right, with better outcomes, and it's again your ability to touch a larger percentage of the marketplace. And I encourage every MSP to go out there. And you haven't signed up for Vision, obviously it's tomorrow, so that'd be a quick turn, but you definitely head over to the 20, reach out to Tim and his team, because what they're doing is truly unique in this marketplace. And yeah, I just acceleration. It's incredible to see. So I'm rooting for you, man. I think you're doing some great work out there.
I'll tell you in closing, kind of like what my grandfather used to always tell my grandmother: you ain't seen nothing yet, baby.
Yeah.
But he's the preacher, and he'd tell her that from the pulpit, baby, you ain't seen nothing yet. And so I have that much faith in this industry. I have that much faith in the MSPs in this industry.
Yeah.
That together, they haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you here tomorrow, and we'll have some links to the event and to the 20 in the show notes. And Tim, as always, man, I really appreciate our chats, and you've been gracious with your time. And like I said, I'm rooting for you, and I'm excited to what you're building, and I can't wait to see the next 35 announcements.
Yep. Hey, and I appreciate it. And again, when I say I'm honored to be here, I mean, hey, it's a humbling thing for somebody to want somebody to come on and spend time with them. So, hey, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your friendship as well.
Awesome, man. All right. Well, have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right.